It's my great pleasure to be here with Stanislav Koshinovsky and Sir Stephen Huff, who performed at the library earlier this week. And both of them are guests of the National Symphony Orchestra and performing this week as well Rachmaninoff's Third Piano Concerto. And so thank you both for being here. I really appreciate it. At the Library of Congress, we have a very large Sergei Rachmaninoff archive that contains most of his music that was composed after 1916. Of course, he composed a lot of music before then that we wish we had, but we don't have that. But we do have a number of pieces that I thought would be of interest to you just to take a look at, since you either performed them or just know them, I'm sure. And so the first piece I thought we'd take a look at is the Fourth Piano Concerto. The original version of this piece was composed in 1926, and what we have in the archive are a number of sketches from that time. And one of them I'll pull up right here is just where we can see the first thoughts about the beginning of the second movement. And here it's labeled Adagio molto. And as part of our collection, what we have is a full score that came after this in 1926. So this is the full holograph original version of the piece. And then we have his substantial revisions that started in 1928 and continued through 1940. In fact, we have a number of pieces that are revisions that came from around that time. And so, it's just this is one of the places where you can see right away where he starts to think, go from a short score and start to think a bit more clearly with what he's going to do with the strings, for instance, on the next page of the full score here.
Do we know the date of this particular sketch?
I don't know, but I do anticipate. I just imagine that it's got to be before 1926.
Yeah, because there was this big gap between Opus 39 and 40 when he wasn't writing music. He was just earning money, had left Russia, and lost confidence. And I find this a fascinating gap because it's between Opus 39 and 40. You have the First World War, the Russian Revolution, jazz, women's suffrage, all electricity in the home. All of these things are happening between those two works. And actually, this is completely coincidental, but this morning I took a screenshot of a quote that someone posted of Rachmaninoff on Twitter that I think is very pertinent to this piece. It said, this is Rachmaninoff speaking, "I feel like a ghost wandering in a world grown alien. I cannot cast out the old way of writing, and I cannot acquire the new. I have made an intense effort to feel the musical manner of today, but it will not come to me." And I think this piece is his intense effort to feel, because it's the modern, it's almost like Prokofiev in places, or Stravinsky, and yet he's still the soul of the 19th century in so many moments when you feel he goes back to that deep nostalgia. We were talking actually about how we both love this piece so much.
Do you know the original version versus the revised version?
Yeah.
Do you have a preference for them, or do you prefer one to the other, or?
Well, I performed both of them. Of course, when you know the original one, it's very interesting to then go back to the one he reduced, the length, and I would prefer the latest version.
The later version?
Yeah.
Interesting, okay.
Yeah, me too.
You too. Okay.
Which is the opposite to the second piano sonata. I think the original version of that is much better than the revision.
Interesting.
Because in the revision, he really just cut it up. He took out bits, he made it simpler. It's almost like he was embarrassed with the material. Like he thought, oh, this is old-fashioned now. I have to be up to date. My collar's too wide. The world had changed. But with this, I think he didn't just cut it, but he found a new language with it, and a new orchestral color as well. That to me, he made a very interesting, beautiful piece into a masterpiece when he did the revision.
Well, what we can do is we can show you the next time that he actually did these revisions. And so this is an example of this one and also that first one right there, if you want to open up that one. What he did was he took the published score and he went through and annotated it, and it has all the crossouts and paste-overs of revisions that he made. And then he also did very extensive manuscript work that you were just looking at a moment ago here as well.
Yeah, the blue pencil. Get rid of that. It's so
Amazing.
Because I think one of his stylistic things is the sequence, isn't it? You know, the development section of the symphony. Well, I'm thinking of the second and the third symphonies. You know, he'll have some material, and then it will go into another key, and so he builds up tension. Actually, Tchaikovsky does something similar at times. Builds up tension. But I think there are times, perhaps, when he felt that the sequences were not necessary, that you could get rid of some of the. I mean, I notice what he's doing here is just cutting out repetition, really, of the same material. And tightening it up, and yes, yeah, this is it's now I see this is the final version, isn't? Although, yeah, this is the final version. That all the markings in here. Yeah, got rid of that page. Thank goodness. I wouldn't have liked to have dealt with that. Yeah, beautiful writing. Very clear and small.
What's interesting, we were noticing as we were looking through, we don't get to look at these that often ourselves, so it's always a pleasure to be able to pull these out. But one thing that we were noticing is that when Rachmaninoff is in the sketch mode, when he's just sketching, he tends to be a much lighter writing with his pencil. And then as he gains confidence and as a greater conviction with what he's putting down, it seems like that is translated onto the page.
Yeah. So interesting. Yeah, the little nuggets of orchestration. I mean, this in the horns, you know, yatta, datta, to have the rhythm with the strings is so much more modern in a way than just holding the chords, you know, yatta, datta, 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 datta. No, you need the horns to be on time, which often they're not. I think there's something very sad about this fourth concerto because I mean, first of all, I think you sense that it's really him. It's the personal, it's Rachmaninoff in his dressing room, not on the stage. You know, it's the real man. But also the fact that, like in that quote, you know, he sort of felt out of fashion. And indeed, people wrote awful things about his music, how it was worthless and it wouldn't last. And then the famous Grove Dictionary in 1951 or 2, when they said, you know, it was third rate and this music will disappear in a generation. Yeah. Of course, today we played to 2 full houses in the last 24 hours. People love this music more than ever. And it's so, and you just wish you've been able to show that to him, because I think by this point, it's very, very sad. I mean, he's away from his home and he's away from things that made him feel comfortable, and so, you know, we'd love to give him a big hug. Say, we love you.
You know, it's one of those things that he revised a number of works, like especially around 1940. And in some ways, I like to think of it in a similar way to Liszt, in that he would make a revision and it would have its own identity, but separate from the original. That where the original still has some value as an artistic work, and it shouldn't be necessarily thrown aside, but I just find that it's kind of like this coming home to his you know, his older work. You know, that's a very kind of a lovely thought to imagine him re-engaging with materials from 1892. You know, in 1940.
Well, the first concerto, which I'm actually playing in a week, that's so deceptive because it says number 1, Opus 1, but of course it's totally different from the original version. Much more so in a way than this, because this shares the same orchestral technique, whereas that is a real student piece made into a very sophisticated piece written after the third concerto. So I've always thought that should be called number 4, really, and this number 5, in a sense.
Well, why don't we take a look at the Rhapsody on a Theme of Paganini? There's so much to go through here, and this is just a very small selection. There's actually a lot more of the fourth concerto revisions.
Really?
So there's a whole lot that, if anybody has time, they can spend.
Well, we were particularly interested, David, before we leave this piece, in the woodwind section in the last movement, which was left out of the printed score. And we hear it on his recording, but most
Some
people...
conductors edit.
Yeah, but we sort of try and listen, what does he do, and dictate, and people have different ideas. But it's right here in the Library of Congress, the original, and it is in the original score, totally there. So I think we both want to take a photograph before we leave to see what he actually wrote. Because this is
finally
this is it. Finally,
document.
it's very, very special, because that passage really is weird without
Yeah,
it. It
exactly.
sounds muddy, and it's just an
I
accompaniment.
always did it myself
Yeah.
when I
Yeah.
perform the fourth.
Yeah, me, I've done it too in recent years, yeah.
Wonderful. We can certainly arrange that.
I'm also interested by the piano reduction of the orchestral part at the bottom. And I'm wondering whether he did the orchestration first and then wrote this out from that, or whether he wrote
opposite.
this out and then orchestrated
Memory
from
aid,
this.
yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Dedicated to Metner, of course.
Yes.
Who was also an exiled Russian, out of step with the
Fantastic
times.
letters between them. For
Oh,
example,
really?
when Metner asks Rachmaninoff, is it possible he will not use the fagotti? And Rachmaninoff said, no, unfortunately, you have to use the fagotti.
Really?
I mean, the only orchestrated, it's only piano concertos.
Yeah.
So he didn't write anything for the orchestra, Metner,
Yeah.
himself.
Do you do the concerto?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I've done all three, actually.
Ah,
concerts, yeah.
It's a very interesting
Yeah,
composer.
and Metner has a relationship to the Rhapsody on the theme of Paganini as well.
Really?
In that the 18th variation is, you can find it in his Fairy Tale Sonata, Metner's Fairy Tale Sonata, which was, I believe, is the only one that Rachmaninoff played in public. I'm not totally sure of that, so I'll probably have to edit that out. But, but I believe that that's the case. And so,
Which is a wonderful piece. That's
yeah,
Fairy Tale Sonata.
these are wonderful. I'm a big.
He was
Metner
also
fan.
someone out of step with the modern world in so many ways. Metner, you know, he's sort of living up in Golders Green, which seems so extraordinary in this, what then was a very undistinguished suburb of London. So this is the manuscript of this piece.
Yes, yeah. So that's the fair copy version that came after he did a number of sketches and whatnot, which I also have to show you. That we have a couple of sketchbooks here that include some other pieces as well. For instance, some of the transcriptions of Rachmaninoff, like the Mendelssohn Scherzo from Midsummer Night's Dream, and as well as a lot of the different variations. And so, again, he goes from a process of making a short score version to where you can kind of look at how he's working things out. But it seems to me like they kind of leap onto the page pretty clearly.
It's always interesting to see what was rejected. Gosh.
That's certainly one of our favorite things to look through. If we have a perfect copy, it's not so interesting because it's then,
Yeah.
but we can see some of the process with this.
So just originally, it was just unison in both hands, and he added the harmony in the. Because this is almost the opposite side of the story for Rachmaninoff, because this was a big success, this piece, unlike the Fourth Concerto, and he never revised this. I mean, it was kind of a perfect piece from when he'd finished it, and I think this made him very happy, that he had
Right.
such a, and it's still, people love this piece so much.
And it comes into play in 1934, I think, is when he finished it. And you can see here, like for instance, here's a sketchbook that has the end of the piece, just right there. And so he's already got it kind of worked out. Now I'll pull up the other one as well, so you can see that next to the full score. And of course, the writing is so beautiful. and
Beautiful.
tiny, but beautiful.
Yeah, you almost wonder how, he must have had amazing reading glasses, or, I don't know.
Yeah,
Because really, this is minuscule, it's hard to.
it really is. But at least it's darker. Whereas with his sketchbooks, you can see the
pencil, yeah.
in comparison, it's very difficult to.
Yeah, there don't seem to have been a lot of changes of mind about this, do there? It's pretty much what we know.
Right.
Although this is a fair copy, so that means he could have changed it in the writing stage.
And what we find is that a lot of the changes that come into play in these situations are just from slips of the pen. Because you start to forget which line is the bassoon, and so you rewrite it in another line or whatever. And so that's a common thing that we find with that.
I think with manuscripts, it'd be interesting to have a compilation of mistakes made just because of page turns, because sometimes a line, it's actually I was teaching the Brahms D minor concerto, and there's a missing note in the score, which is in the piano score, which is in the main score, just because it was a page turn, and it was the copyist just was starting afresh, and so little things like that, you know, line can go to the wrong instrument sometimes.
Right, exactly.
You know, I think the other thing he gained over the years was just realizing, as he played these concertos, that the orchestra can easily drown out the soloist. So from the second concerto, much thicker orchestration than the third, and then by the time you get here, it's very transparent. There's almost nowhere in this piece where the orchestra could cover. It's incredibly well written like that.
So this is extremely faint, but it does go, it shows actually the theme. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to find it in time, but the theme comes very late in the sketchbook. So it's a kind of a interesting idea that he didn't really need to worry about the theme since it was very memorable.
Just knew what he was
Yeah.
doing, yeah.
So,
Interesting. Are there any variations in here that he didn't end up using in the final?
you know, that's a good question. I don't know that for certain. They all look familiar to me, but I have to go through it carefully.
Well, this is da-dum-ba-da, ya-dum-ba-da, but originally da-da-da-da was as triplets. And triplets, is it triplets in the, no, it is still 16th. Yeah. Yeah. It's almost more interesting, isn't it, just to see
Yeah.
what got rejected. '15th. Well, that's interesting. This is the 15th variation, the fast artato one, isn't it? And now it's 14 here.
14th,
So obviously he's... Not much has been changed from this sketch.
Yeah, he seemed to have a pretty clear idea of what he was doing. Although the variation swapping is something you'll find in lots of variation sets in the manuscripts. For instance, we have the Brahms Handel variations, where a couple of the variations are, you know, switched from their published order. But it's kind of an interesting thing that works when the keys work. But so, you know, another thing that comes to mind looking at these, and as we look at maybe another piece, the symphonic dances, is that the piano writing, you can kind of tell where it is, and the other things are a little bit less, a little bit more timid in terms of the short score. But we have a very unique situation with the symphonic dances because we have the short score, the version for two pianos, and the orchestral score that can all be looked at. And we also have sketch material as well, and we are, you know, very much wanting people to come and look at this and study these pieces. But it's a way to kind of get to know these works. There's a story that he was working on these concurrently, the different versions, and so it's interesting to see how things you know, change and differ. So maybe we could take a quick look at those.
And of course
Also the recording.
Yeah, of him playing it, which is
Ormandy,
astonishing,
yeah,
really. I mean,
he's singing, playing.
yeah, it's so precious that, and the playing is so fantastic.
And I'm curious about the first movement, that passage he added later. The first movement.
I don't know whether I know that.
That's one.
Let's see.
Let's see.
Here's the
And the last tam-tam, which is quarter note plus dot, and short chord in the end.
Right.
So I wonder if it's the same in the manuscript or not. Because some conductors are cut it all short.
It can be a difficult moment, the end of this piece. You don't want it to fall apart and not know when it finishes somehow.
I'll put the short score there, and then here is the, yeah, please.
No, maybe just... Oh, this is almost to... Wow.
So that piano passage is here.
So the red pen came out for certain changes, obviously. Took out the piccolo there.
Have you ever performed the two-piano version?
No,
No.
I never played it.
So it's missing here. Was it even published in Boozing Hawks, the last version? That piano part. And it's not here. In case good saxophone is not available.
So what does he,
In case
which instrument does he?
in score normally it says bassoon, as he actually wrote.
Yeah.
English horn part is played.
He was, I don't know if he realized that he was throwing a lifeline to saxophonists to have a career, you know.
Yes. But it also gives this piece its part of its American flavor, I think, doesn't it? Because you feel this is a piece that probably wouldn't have been written like this if he was still living in Russia. It feels New World in so many ways, in a way that, you know, earlier works, it's impossible to think the other way around. But this, the Paganini Rhapsody, it's partly the jazz element that you hear in there that reminds you, and even the melodies, you know, there's something bluesy almost about croony. You imagine some sort of Nat King Cole type voice singing some of these tunes.
What was cutting? Phil or can you read it?
I can't, well, I've got a pair of reading glasses here, let's have a look.
Under the red.
Sol, cello, solo. Oh, it's solo.
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 Originally it was solo.
Interesting.
And the bow.
So from what you're seeing, does it feel like a pre-publication draft that still had further changes before we get to the version
Yeah.
we know?
Yeah. I think so, because little things like this is almost like an editor's markings, isn't it, more than a composer's? Just little obvious mistakes and refinements. Too many changes to make in red pen.
And Tutti was only here.
Yeah, this feels very final, doesn't it? Like
Yeah.
like it's just been copied out neatly.
And finally the theme of the first movement.
Yes.
Of the first symphony.
The first symphony, yes.
Yeah.
It's
Which
a
he
magic.
thought was nobody should knew it actually.
Really?
Of course. He
Because
said,
it was not existing at that point.
Yeah,
in
he
the
burned the score and it
Yeah.
was rediscovered just
Oh.
because of the material of the Leningrad St. Philharmonic.
Right.
It survived only with music, with the voices of the orchestra.
Yeah.
So
It's a magical color.
I thought if we have time for just one final one, just to
Yeah.
look at, only because there's so much to go through and look.
course.
I thought it just might be interesting to look at a song and his transcription, so Daisies.
Oh yes.
just if you look to the last tam-tam,
Of course.
if possible. Last page. Is it? Tam-tam. Ah, yes, it's a long note. Correct.
It's a dotted.
Yeah, it's the only.
It's very strange, isn't it?
I always do this.
But do you have a cut off after 3 beats?
No, shh, it
allow it
stays.
to go.
Yeah.
But
It's
when do
amazing
people
effect.
applaud? When?
They wait until it's gone, and it's very special. Otherwise, it's just.
Yeah.
I think it's important. Yeah.
Hmm.
It was New York.
That's also in the score.
Yeah.
So it was written where?
I thank thee, Lord.
Yeah.
Same as Haydn. Laus Deo after every piece. Yeah.
Благодарю тебя, Господи. Fantastic.
It's very special. Gosh.
Yeah.
Nothing can
Touch
beat
the
this.
history.
I know. It's just astonishing. Those hands.
Well, as a final, let's just go ahead and we'll move that out of the way, and we'll just take a look at these. This is one of the earlier things that we have of Rachmaninoff's, and the as you can see, it's barely legible at all. I think I can remember what page it's on. But and this is actually, so this is the Opus 38 songs from 1916. And this manuscript actually contains two songs that were not published until, I believe they were published in the 90s, the 1990s. But
So you would not want this to be presented to you to read
right,
if a singer wanted to go through a song, would you? I mean, you'd really be struggling. Is that just age, or is it that he wrote it very faint, do you think? Or both, possibly?
you know, just because of the nature of the other sketches and things like that, I feel like it was just jotted down hastily and.
Because the ledger, the lines are not faded, so
Exactly.
it's just the... Yeah.
What I was hoping to find, and I'll try to find in a moment if you want to look at this first. This is the piano transcription of Daisies.
Which is so beautiful.
Yeah. And my understanding is that this was done in the late 20s and then revised again around 1940.
Yeah. He tidied up those transcriptions and some early piano pieces around that time.
Exactly, and I know that you've recorded some of those, so I just pulled them out just for fun. The humoresque, and the melody. From,
Yeah. In the late, I think I used the later version, although there's a couple of things that I used from the earlier version sometimes. Well, this was the period when he wasn't really composing. I think, you know, he was doing transcriptions to keep his pen sharp, as it were, you know, when he was playing concerts and earning money and, you know, trying to keep his career over here, you know, between the Aged Tableau, Opus 39, and the fourth concerto.
Right.
Yeah. But what a wonderful collection of transcriptions they are. I mean, every one of them is just so brilliant.
Well, is there anything else that you would like to take a look at, or I know that there's a lot to look at, but
Well, it's, I mean, it's hard to know. It's like
Third symphony. Do you have third symphony?
we do. I don't have it up here with me, but we
I'm
can.
going to say about that cut he does, half of the bar in the end of exposition of the first movement. Only in his recording it exists, actually.
Really,
Yeah.
I did not know
It would
that.
be interesting to
Yeah.
know if it's crossed in the manuscript or not.
We'll check it out. I think Kate's going to go see if she can find it.
Yeah.
take a look at it.
Amazing.
We'll go and see if we can
Please,
get it.
thank
Sure.
you.
But do you want to move on to this?
Yeah, sure. Maybe I should. But let me thank you both so much for just taking a look at these manuscripts.
you.
I
This
would
is-
love to